This RealAg Radio podcast episode is brought to you by Coragen Max Insecticide from FMC. Get fast, selective, extended control of grasshoppers, Bertha armyworms, diamondback moth, and cutworms in a convenient, concentrated formulation. Coragen Max Insecticide works alongside beneficials for a 1-2 punch that keeps the fight going long after you've left the field.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. Shaun Haney's not feeling great, so I'm going to host, but he is still going to join us for the Issues Panel after the first break. Also on the Issues Panel, we've got Tyler McCann and Kelvin Heppner. So Tyler, of course, with CAPI, Kelvin Heppner from here at RealAgriculture. It is going to be, for the most part, all about Monday's election. We have so much to cover. We've had news of different seats, different ridings that may be in question. We got a Conservative platform this week that we're going to have to unpack. So much to talk about ahead of Monday's federal election. So that is what we're going to spend most of today's show doing. We do have, though, Chace Nelson will join me for a product spotlight in our third segment. So stick around for that. And as always, if you've got feedback on today's show, which I don't know how you won't, seeing as we are headed to an election on Monday. 855-776-6147. You can give us a call, drop us a line, let us know if you've got a question or a story lead or just some feedback on what we've covered. You can also email me, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or of course find us across social media. I do hope, of course, that you've had a wonderful week and you're planning a big to-do on Monday. I don't know. Maybe I can rope everybody into having a watch party with me on Monday. Let's see. I'm going to float the idea, see how it goes. All right. Let's take a break here on RealAg Radio, and I'll be back with more and the Issues Panel right after this.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
It's time for today's product spotlight, and joining me now is Jason Mann. He's president of Genesis Fertilizers. Transportation costs obviously are a huge component of the price of fertilizer. So how does leveraging the Port of Churchill and the Hudson's Bay Railway, so through the Arctic Gateway Group, how does this help reduce the cost and provide more stable access to fertilizer for prairie farmers specifically?
So we're trying to open up new supply channels. You know, there's not many suppliers in the market of phosphate today. So if we have the competitiveness of being able to go buy Panamax vessels from a supplier overseas, we should be able to get a better purchase price. We can have a little bit more efficient logistics. So if we can get it here on a vessel to Churchill, then we're really talking about maybe only 1,000 miles of rail to get it into Western Canada. And likely at a better rail rate. Because we're having this partnership with Arctic Gateway Group, we'd be looking at favorable rail rates for a large portion of that trackage from Churchill down to the PAW.
For anyone who's looking for more information, head on over to the Genesis Fertilizers website. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. And before I bring the Issues Panel in, a reminder that with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. All right, it's time to bring them in. We have with us today Kelvin Heppner out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, we're still on speaking terms, but maybe for not long.
Well, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I guess since you did, and since I see you're wearing an Ottawa Senators apparel today, I guess we can talk about it, and we can be back on speaking terms, like full speaking terms, in a couple days here when the series is over, I think.
Yes, when Toronto tanks. We have you right where we want you, Kelvin. Overconfident, going for a sweep.
None.
Yeah. Anyway.
Not overconfident, but Ottawa is no Boston or Tampa Bay. I'll say that so far.
All right, whatever. Anyway, yes, for anyone watching on YouTube, this is a retro, an original early 90s Ottawa Senators sweatshirt. I'm using it, I hope, as a good luck charm for the weekend, but we'll see. Anyway, so check it out. And also joining us from Real Agriculture, Mr. Shaun Haney. You may remember him from yesterday's radio show. Welcome here, Shaun.
Hey, it's great to be here, Lyndsey. Appreciate you hosting today, as I feel like a sack of donkey manure.
That is a colloquial term for not feeling great. Okay, so we'll go easy on you today, Shaun. Based out of Lethbridge.
Here's the thing,
it looks
though,
beautiful there.
It is. Spring is in the air around here. I watched the game last night. It feels like the Leafs has just been good enough. Like the Senate, it could very easily be entirely the other way. The Leafs have played well. Don't get me wrong. But we in our house, I feel conflicted because I told Kelvin I had this dream. The Leafs were going to win the cup, which was like a whole premonition. But we have really good family friends. The Gregs, Ridley is number 71 for the Senators. So I feel very conflicted about who should win this series.
I don't think you should have any conflict whatsoever. I think it's very clear who you should be cheering for, and Kelvin will be very disappointed. But thank you very much for that premonition that we don't care about. Okay, and joining us on the Issues Panel, Mr. Sports Ball himself, Tyler McCann, Managing Director with the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute. How are you, Tyler?
I'm doing well, Lyndsey, and I've actually been watching some sports games, so I feel like I've got some value to add this time. But that value amounts to, it turns out it's not a good idea to spend most of the game in the penalty box, and maybe Ottawa will figure that out at some point.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah,
it was tough to figure out what to watch last night. You had hockey on, you had basketball on, there was baseball, the NFL draft was on. It was I need to improve my jewelry. Like some of those guys that got drafted last night, there was some pretty epic jewelry last night.
I disagree, Shaun. I think you wear just enough jewelry, but that's just me. Okay. Also on the docket though, because let's leave the Leafs utter collapse in the first round to next week's discussion. Coming up on Monday, we have an election, everybody, a federal election. Tyler and Kelvin both, actually, but Tyler, I'll start with you. A discussion yesterday at a webinar ahead of the election. We also saw the Conservatives put out their platform. How many things in the Conservative platform refer to agriculture?
I think by my count, Lyndsey, there are kind of 2.5. The Conservatives commit to farmland protection. I should say 3.5. So that's kind of the one kind of pure ag legislation is that they're going to protect farmland. I think that there's kind of a big question around how that works because that's typically a provincial area of responsibility. But we'll see where that goes. They talk about farmers in the context of tax fairness, but no specific agriculture measures there. And they talk about farmers as gun owners. And the reason why I add a half is because they do also talk about getting rid of the liberal fuel regulations. And farmers may not know fully what that means, but that means, in theory, biofuels demand is going away. And I tell you, a lot of us that look at these things, we're pretty shocked to see that being the full extent of kind of ag platform. We know that the conservative ag critic John Barlow spent a lot of time doing a lot of work to put forward recommendations. We know that this is something that a lot of members of the Conservative caucus think about all of the time. It's pretty mind-boggling, to be honest, to not see ag commitments in that platform document that came out.
Mm-hmm. Kelvin, this is your idea of exciting reading. So to that point, what do you feel there were some glaring, omissions here as far as things that, this, as we said, Barlow himself has had private members' bills put forward on things, but we're not seeing any of that here in this platform.
Our girls were shocked this week when I admitted I hadn't read The Hunger Games or Harry Potter. I said I don't read fiction. I can't remember the last book of fiction that I've read.
You haven't read Harry Potter?
That might apply to, I'm not saying platform is fiction here. But this is just an elections communications document. We know that the Conservatives have other plans that they've been working on. Like Tyler said, Barlow and his office, his staff have been coming up with proposals and putting them through to the leader, Pierre Poilievre's office for months already, especially when it looked like the Conservatives were when it was a sure thing that the Conservatives were going to be forming the next government. I do push back a little bit, though, on the premise that we haven't been talking about agriculture enough, or that the parties haven't been talking about agriculture enough, because when we talk about Canada's most important trade relationship, when we talk about tariffs, when we talk about cutting red tape in government and approvals for getting the economy going, driving economic growth, export diversification, that type of thing, those are all things that we like to talk about in agriculture and that we wish government and politicians spent more time talking about. And I do feel like there has been, at least. We'll see whether there's follow through after the election. That's the big question mark. Now, there's at least been lip service paid to some of these topics during the election campaign. The big question, though, is whether the parties, whoever forms government on after Monday, actually follows through on some of the focus of the discussion during the campaign.
Now, Shaun, you were the moderator last week of the Ag Leaders debate, of which Barlow and Cody Boyce took part. Obviously, in that context, all we can talk about is agriculture. How do you feel they did as far as bringing fulsome sort of discussions to the most important ag files during the debate?
Well, we realized a couple things. The Greens and the NDP really aren't in the discussion when it comes to ag issues. I think that was feedback. That's just not what I saw as the moderator, but that's what a lot of the audience said. And I appreciate all the feedback people have given on the debate. I think Yves Perron is, especially outside of Quebec, is kind of underestimated in terms of his knowledge on the ag file. I thought he did quite well representing the Bloc and their interest. But what also stuck out to me is, and we knew this kind of going in, you look at the Liberal platform, you look at the Conservative platform on agriculture, maybe it's just the two individuals involved and their familiarity with the file and working together. They're much more similar than different, if that's the way to put it. But I liked the fact they went at each other. And these are two people that really respect each other. Mm-hmm. And they went at it. And I thought it was fun. I wish we could have had a little bit more time in the debate. Maybe we can do that next time for more of that sort of tiger attack and, hey, wait a minute here. And, that's not true. Like I really enjoy that about a debate. And they were spirited about it. And I thought they both John Barlow and Cody Boyce performed quite well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Tyler?
Yeah, Lyndsey, I mean, people should go to YouTube. First, watch that Ag Leaders debate, then watch the webinar that CAPI hosted yesterday that Kelvin and I participated on. I think that there's this sense, and Kelvin alluded to a bit earlier, that these platforms don't really matter. We know in the Ag Leaders debate there was more of a substantive discussion on these things. We know Conservatives have policies on it. But I think it really does matter, and it does signal how seriously parties take these issues when you can look and see what their commitments are. One of the things that I think was striking in the Ag Leaders debate, and you could tell in the Liberal platform, is that the Liberal Party, with Cody Boyce as a minister and Mark Carney as a leader, is different on agriculture than it used to be. And like they really are kind of splitting hairs at times to figure out the difference between where Cody Boyce stands on an issue and where John Barlow stands on an issue, right? Like they both agree that there needs to be CFIA reform. They both agree trade and diversification are important. They have very similar supply managed positions. And I think sometimes that can be a bit frustrating because like, I think that there really should be some differences there. But again, Cody Boyce called out John Barlow on what is the Conservative position on biofuels. And I know John pushed back and said that they support it. But I'll go back to that now that we know what the Conservative platform looks like. Right now, the Conservative platform is just to take away that key driver of demand for corn and for canola and soy products in Canada, and not commit to replace it with anything. And I think it would have been a more spirited debate. I think it would have been a much more spirited debate if Cody could have gone back at John and said, but John, your platform contains nothing for farmers. And I think that's it's a shame that wasn't out before the debate happened.
One piece of feedback I heard a lot was no matter who wins on Monday, people's reaction was, based on what I saw in that debate, agriculture is going to be, if one of those two gentlemen is minister, agriculture is going to be represented by somebody that knows the file. And I heard that from a lot of people that watched the debate. And I think a lot of people are familiar in agriculture with John Barlow, but if you're not a political wonk and following what's going on at the Ag Committee, you might not have known really who Cody Blois was. And I think it was kind of his coming out party, so to speak, for a lot of people more outside of the people following the general politics of the day-to-day. So that's another observation I got from people that watched.
But yeah, Tyler, I'll go to you in a sec. It does, though, that is predicated, though, on whether or not either of them would. So let's say Carney wins. Yeah, Blois may not maintain his seat as Ag Minister. And if Poilievre wins, there's no guarantee Barlow is in. So yes, if it were the two of them, I think many of us fully respect what they bring to the Ag file, but there's no guarantees. Tyler, go ahead.
Two things. Again, I think one of the reasons that a platform document is also useful is that it tells us how much influence the critics and the people championing these causes have. And again, if you can't get your platform, if you can't get your commitments in the platform, that's a concern. But the second thing is Shaun talked about how important it is to have somebody that knows the files. I think that the last couple of years federally have proven that it doesn't matter whether or not you know the files. It's, are you motivated to do anything about it? And I think that that's actually
right. But both those guys are motivated to do something about it.
I know. But Shaun, we had a federal agriculture minister that knew agriculture, and that wasn't good enough, right? And so this is where I just always want to challenge people, because I think even in the context of, there's always this debate, I think you guys have talked about it on the show, whether or not agriculture ministers should be farmers or whether or not they should know the sector. I don't think that that's as important as, is the person motivated and do they have influence around the cabinet table? They can learn the details. They can talk to farmers and farm leaders and people from associations. Yeah. What matters is, are they motivated or not? And I think that really should be the bar that we kind of hold the ministers to.
In this situation, not in question. I think, too, that policy document this week, our part of it, too, is, and I question the lack of ag that was in it, but the reality is, too, it was a campaign document. It's released a week before people go to the polls. They do not need agriculture to vote for them. They need blue-collar working Canadians in urban areas in the suburbs to vote blue conservative, not red liberal, and that's who that document speaks to.
Mm-hmm. We are going to, in our next segment, talk a bit about the leaders, of course, and who needs to vote for them on Monday to see which one gets in. But Kelvin, before we leave this topic of the different platforms, one of the key parts I think that I do want to hit on just quickly is on the capital gains changes that the Liberal government had brought forward that are on hold. Is there daylight between how the Liberals say they want to deal with that and how the Conservatives say they want to deal with that?
Not on bringing it back to the 50% mark, but the Conservatives have announced that they would remove the capital gains tax on reinvestment in Canada, which is something that it's a huge policy if they can follow through on it. But there's some complications in terms of how you would execute on determining whether an investment was in Canada versus not, that type of thing. So the actual execution of that so there's some difference there in terms of announcements, but the execution I think is a big question mark. I do think Cody Blois, though, if the Liberals win, there's a very high chance he is the next Liberal Ag Minister. Lyndsey, he's been providing recommendations to the Carney campaign throughout the leadership race, throughout the debates, and so I think that he will likely be our Ag Minister if the Liberals win again. And like Tyler and Shaun have alluded to, he brings some ambition to the role that we've been talking about since he was appointed to that role by Carney back in early March. And I also think one difference, while Carney and Trudeau have a lot of things in common, and Canadians seem to be willing to look past it, Carney himself, I heard it said this morning, by 6:05 in the morning, he gets up at 6, and by 6:05 has spent more time thinking about the economy than Trudeau did in a year. And I think that's something that Canadian agriculture will benefit from, having somebody like Cody Blois and Carney thinking about what drives the economy. That can be positive potentially for Canadian agriculture.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on one of those things, but we got to take a quick break, and we're going to be joined for our product spotlight by Chace Nelson right after this, and then we'll come back to the issues panel. But did want to put in a plug for applying your tags with the manufacturer's recommended applicator for your specific tag can help prevent losses from factors beyond your control. The right applicator locks the components together, increasing retention. For best practices, visit retentionmatters.ca or call 1-877-909-2333. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this. I'm Lyndsey Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lyndsey Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com, the Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
I'm Lyndsey Smith with Real Agriculture and RealAg Radio, and joining me now, it's Chace Nelson, who's customer sales lead with Bayer. Chace, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing well. We are going to talk about fungicides today. Super important. And of course, when we talk about fungicides, we talk about effective modes of action. But what do we mean by effective modes of action? Why is that active ingredient being effective so important in the fungicide conversation?
Yeah, so if you take a look at the fungicide that you're going to spray and break it down into the active ingredients, the most important thing is you want all of the active ingredients in there to be effective on the disease that you're going after. So if you're going after Ascochyta in lentils, you want the modes that you're spraying to be effective on that disease. Otherwise, you're wasting your money.
When it comes to making those choices, of course, for what product you're going to use or what modes of action, the Bayer product Delaro is one of those. It's a trusted brand for pulse growers. What are the differences? If someone sees Delaro and Delaro Complete, what are the differences between those two products?
Yeah, so the big difference between the two is with Delaro Complete, we've added a strong shot of Group 7 into there. The Group 7 is called fluopyram. The other big thing people ask, I guess, is what's the cost difference? I'm a farmer myself. Whether you want to call it price conscious or cheap or whatever, I'm always worried when these new products come out that they're going to be astronomically priced. And the gap between these two products is small enough that it's almost a no-brainer to pay the extra money, get that extra active ingredient, about 150% of the active ingredient load and a new group. So there's not many scenarios where it would make sense not to pay the extra.
So now when farmer is choosing that product, like you mentioned, a farmer yourself, looking at, adding perhaps that mode of action in the same product, how does that work in the face of not just effectiveness, but in preventing potential resistance down the road?
Yeah, so it's became a pretty popular topic, fungicide resistance, the last few years, especially in the pulses. Adding that Group 7 in there and combining it with our really strong Group 3 prolongs the life of both. So the Group 3s are the least likely to develop resistance out of the actives that we use on pulses, but Group 7s are also quite strong for not developing resistance. Combine the two, you kind of get the best of both worlds. They're supporting each other. Both, like we were talking about, have activity on our key diseases, the anthracnose, the Ascochyta. You take Delaro and you're getting a boost on all those key diseases from adding that Group 7.
So, we think about, when we think about resistance, we think the Group 11s, certainly the resistant biotypes that are out there, particularly with anthracnose and Ascochyta. How does Delaro Complete fit into this resistance management strategy?
Yeah, it's something that's been top of mind the last 3, 4, 5 years. There's been a lot of talk about Group 11 resistance, anthracnose. starting to be Ascochyta. We have a very nice label for people that are concerned with that. We have control of both Group 11 resistant anthracnose and Group 11 resistant Ascochyta on label. So if you're worried about either of those, our Group 3 and 7 are strong enough on their own to take care of those. So very big advantage there. Some companies have went a different route, and they're making new products and having no Group 11 in them at all. From our standpoint, we have products like that have been out for a long time. We have Proline, Proline Gold. But if you're spraying in June or early July, there is a lot of benefit to having those Group 11s in there. You get your plant health benefits. You get extra chlorophyll in the leaves, extra lignin in the stems, better standability, lower stress. And then you also get help on all the diseases that aren't Group 11 resistant. So as long as that Group 11 is paired with actives that are strong enough to take care of the diseases that have resistance, it's very beneficial to have that Group 11 in there still. So I wouldn't cast it to the side yet like some companies are doing. It definitely has some value.
Mm-hmm. So definitely a place for the Group 11s, but you have to be making sure that you've got something that will take care of those biotypes that may be resistant. Now, and one thing I wanted to touch on is the active ingredient load. Why is that number important, and what should farmers ask about?
Yeah, so in recent years, prothioconazole has came off of patent, and it's starting to pop up everywhere. The generic companies are taking it. The big name companies are taking it and putting it into their fungicides. You'll see things marketed like equivalent to Delaro or same product as Delaro. And it's not often true. Our rate that we put into Delaro and Delaro Complete is 62 grams per acre of that Group 3 active. We've seen products as low as 50% of that shot of prothioconazole down in the 30s be marketed as an equivalent to Delaro. So obviously not the same if you're at 50%, but even the big companies coming out with it, they're putting it at an 80% rate, 75% rate. Just make sure you do the math for yourself if you are looking at a product other than Delaro or Delaro Complete with that prothioconazole.
Super important point. Make sure you know what you're getting, what you're paying for. All right, Chace, for those who have questions or want to order, where can they go? Who can they speak with?
Yeah, so if you want to contact your Bayer rep and kind of talk about it more in depth, that would be great. But also just your local retail is a good stop as well to have the conversation on price, resistance management, maybe a more unbiased opinion. Those would be the two.
Reach out, ask those questions, get in contact with your rep or your retailer, and make sure you're ready for the year ahead. Chace, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Find everything you need for outstanding weed control in your wheat and barley from the cross-spectrum herbicide experts at Corteva. Corteva is proud to offer a wide selection of cross-spectrum herbicides for maximum convenience, effective resistance management, and customized control of your toughest grassy and broadleaf weeds. No matter what kind of weed challenges you're experiencing, we've got the right fit for your farm. Visit corteva.ca to learn more.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. And don't put your yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anvol Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Coke Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.com. Well, we'll bring back in the issues panel, Shaun, Haney, Kelvin, Heppner, Tyler McCann, picking up on the discussion about influence around the cabinet table. I think this is one I want to stick with for just a moment because I think it is really important, is that, again, understanding the ag file, yes, important, but where agriculture will sit in any new government, I think is an interesting point. And Kelvin, you brought up something that I think is really important in that, well, Carney has kept much of the cabinet around him the same as what Trudeau had. There are some differences, and there certainly are differences between Trudeau and Carney. Kelvin, when you look at it, I think many of us in agriculture felt like agriculture was sort of an also-ran. It was there to be solved, not necessarily to be supported. Where do you see agriculture fitting in under Carney and under Poilievre?
Well, I think this goes together with the overall societal discourse and how we've shifted from talking about a lot of social issues to what drives the economy, cost of living, affordability, inflation the last number of years. And now we're talking trade and tariffs and what it's going to take to maintain our standard of living in Canada if trade with the U.S. is restricted with our largest trading partner, that type of thing. And so to me, the Liberal Party has, under Carney, even before Carney, it was already being forced by the electorate to swing to focusing more on economic issues. And I think whenever economic issues are a higher priority, agriculture is in a better position than if it's if the government doesn't understand how the economy works and what brings in tax revenue and what's needed to help Canadians maintain, never mind improve, but maintain a standard of living, especially for younger generations that are frustrated with how things are going right now. So to me, as long as economic issues, cost of living, affordability, trade are important in the political rankings, power rankings, then I think agriculture has a better spot in cabinet and more influence in whichever party forms the government.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, your thoughts?
Again, I think it's interesting. The context that the country is in is clearly different, and as Kelvin says, that has an impact on everything at the end of the day. Again, it maybe wasn't surprising to kind of hear Kelvin talking positively about Mark Carney earlier and his kind of different approach to these issues.
I set myself up.
That didn't.
You really did. You just teed it up.
But it's interesting on the flip side to think about it in the context of, again, there's this difference between kind of an economic vision of growth and opportunity on kind of that we see on the Liberal side and kind of the Poilievre approach to kind of growth and opportunity, but through unlocking the potential. And so the closest thing we saw to an ag day from the Conservative camp was, we're going to axe the food packaging tax, get rid of these plastic regulations. And I think it's a bit of a challenge to try and square that with what does it actually mean in governing from an agriculture perspective, where by and large, there are issues like the carbon tax, but that's kind of taken out of the way. Agriculture does need more of that strategic support and investment to unlock its full potential. As much as we often think about regulatory burden and those barriers in the sector, that Conservative kind of small government, cut the budgets, cut the regulations, probably doesn't have that same impact on agriculture at the end of the day, let's be honest, as kind of targeted strategic investments and growing the sector that we see on the Liberal side. Something like transportation.
Now who's providing the parade for Carney? Holy smokes!
I am pointing out the difference, the contrast in those two visions at the end of the day. I'm trying to take a balanced approach by talking about the Conservatives too. It was Kelvin that was focusing on the Liberals.
I see that. Yeah.
But it is like, if you think about something like trade infrastructure and trade diversification, that agriculture is clearly identified as essential, right, to changing that agenda and growing things forward. That takes significant investment. Let's be honest, right? Like that does take a kind of a bigger spending government. And so how do you kind of reconcile the need for that to grow agriculture with the reality that that's not the frame that the Conservatives are running in today? They are running in a kind of smaller government, smaller spending, smaller regulations. And again, those are good things. I think that there's a strong argument to be made that we can spend less in the agriculture portfolio, but spend it better and get better results and better outcomes at the end of the day. But that's not kind of the approach that actually we're hearing out of the Conservative camp.
Did you develop amnesia over what has happened the last 10 years?
Yeah. But I think that's the $1 million question of this campaign, right? Is So the Mark Carney on day one gets rid of the carbon tax. And Liberal ministers that spent a decade defending the carbon tax now celebrate, the fact that gas has gotten cheaper. And it is, again, so Carney's different, but the cabinet is largely the same. The team behind them is largely the same. The platform is largely the same. And I think it's an interesting contrast between Carney talking about a relatively focused agenda and the Liberals coming up with a platform that's like not focused at all, and it's big spending, and so I don't know how you reconcile those things.
To be fair though, are Canadians voting for Carney, or are they just voting? They don't want Pierre Poilievre. It's a personality contest, and so I don't know if we should all just jump into the warm water here. That this is a big time. Like to me, it kind of seems it's just more a vote against Pierre Poilievre is kind of been the litmus test here.
And in some ways, the Liberals in the last 2 months have changed their policies on a lot of different things so that they've taken away those differences from between them and the Conservatives. And so that's to me, the big question is this is this like who the Liberal government will be going forward? Is this actually a change in what the Liberals stand for? Or are we electing the same people just with a different leader? Will there be a change in priorities? And it's actually amazing or wild to think about how quickly public opinion has changed from how sour it was. Just you go back middle of January, and the polls, of course, were in a vastly different place. And look at it today, are these the real Liberals? Right. Is this real Liberal policy that we're going to see months after the election?
And that is, I think, a big question. Is that something that I think we can all, as Canadians, if you follow this stuff, we can agree Liberals are better at winning elections. And why are they better at winning elections? Because they'll pretty much tell you anything you want to hear. So Conservatives tend to struggle. And in this election period, I would say very much one of the criticisms of the Poilievre campaign is that they have not pivoted. And one of the biggest differences from, say, December numbers, November numbers, is we've had two things: Trudeau stepping down, and we've had Trump start his administration, his second administration, and the rhetoric and the all of the tariffs and all of the uncertainty that's happened. So yes, we've seen just an unprecedented amount of swing in public perception or public approval of these two parties. But at the same time, there's been like huge things that have happened. So my question is, and this comes to a head obviously on Monday, but in my very own riding, I am in the riding of Carleton. Pierre Poilievre is the Conservative candidate in my riding. And this week, there were inklings that perhaps this seat is even in question. Shaun, I'll go to you. Does that surprise you? And if not, why do you think potentially that Pierre Poilievre is not potentially going to win this riding?
Oh, well, I don't know the inner workings of that riding, but I think it just kind of showcases again how it is a pushback against him personally, and this has been a challenge for him. I don't know how much he won the riding by the last election. Let's just assume he wins the riding. If we have a minority Liberal government that the Bloc is a part of the coalition, Poilievre he's finished. Like we've talked here previously on this show about what does Poilievre do and how does what does it look like if Carney does win. I'm trying to figure out now at this point. I think a lot of people are. How any sort of situation of defeat? How is he the leader after Monday? It's a real personal challenge. This is a massive loss of a lead, and you can blame it on whatever you want, Trump and Carney telling a good story or whatever it is. The fact is, it's not looking very good. But Canadians got to vote, and we'll see. But
I will have you know, and we talked about this week, the same day that the Globe and Mail published an article saying that Pierre's seat may be in question, the very first and only so far door knockers came in my driveway, and they were for the Conservatives. And so thanks, because someone actually stopped in. I don't think, Kelvin, I think you said you've never had door knockers show up at your farm. It is, I will say this about this riding. So Carleton, this is the first time the riding is the boundaries that it is. So this is the first election that the boundaries have been changed. So this riding used to be Canada Carleton, and it was sort of just the west half. So Poilievre's riding of Carleton, that he's held for quite some time, has expanded. So it is largely this strange sort of split riding between rural and suburban. but it is in Ottawa, and he's a person that's talking about cutting the public service potentially. Also someone who supported the convoy, which, here in Ottawa,
so he gets
popular.
stuck with that. See, this is what
I know he does.
With that, but Carney can just do a full 180 on pretty much everything he believed prior to January.
Shaun, look inside yourself.
I know. Yeah, well, I have.
So no, I completely agree. I'm just saying these are the things that are at play in this riding. Okay. And also, yes. And does Carney have teeth? We don't know. That's also a question that came out in the last little while. He's an interesting man. Okay. So, but Tyler, it's a question for you. You of course live, relatively close to me in, La Belle Province. Your thoughts on Poilievre hanging on to his riding?
So first, I think it's important to kind of set the record straight on the Liberals that they're also committing to spend less on government. So it's not just Poilievre that's going to cut the bureaucracy. Mark Carney is running on that too. So let's understand where the Liberals stand on that. Poilievre's actually not that different on that issue. Again, I think there's this challenge around what does the future of the Conservative Party look like after Monday, and what do the results mean? There is a good chance that Poilievre may get more votes, certainly in an absolute number, than Harper got in 2011 when he won his majority government. There's a chance that Poilievre may get a higher percentage of the vote than Stephen Harper got in 2011. The difference is the collapse of the NDP this time has kind of changed the game and changed those dynamics completely. And so I don't think, Shaun may be pushing for Poilievre to be at the door and kind of this rush for change. I think it's too early to say kind of where that's going to go. I think you really have to understand kind of what has happened on Monday, why the results are what they are, and kind of what the future of the Conservative Party looks like.
Conservatives have a history of not slow playing it. Sorry.
It's
a very orange guy in the background in your backdrop there, Tyler.
Also, he's wearing red, everybody. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll note Tyler's wearing red, and there's a very orange sky behind him.
There's blue on my shirt too.
No, I only see red. Anyway, okay.
It's pretty distinct.
It's very orange. Okay, so Kelvin, let's maybe just end on that for this segment. Poilievre is not the only one. Now, I will say, as a local here, so Carney's riding is right next to Poilievre's, and I know that no one's saying, oh, he may not get it. It's also not like he's not terribly well known in his riding because it's not really like where he's been. And there definitely isn't, like this huge like love of Carney within his own riding. So just putting it out there, to Tyler's point that, realistically, Carney is sort of the unknown. I think we've talked about this on the show is, if Carney doesn't win this election, does he stick around as leader of the opposition? No, he's out. Anyway, so Kelvin, last word on this one. As far as I did want to mention just quickly, we had a huge turnout for the advance polls last weekend, and we were texting back and forth about what we were seeing and what we were hearing. Did you do any exit polls to let us know what you think about where this will all end up? Who does it favor, all these advance polls?
That's a good question. In the past, of course, Tyler can back me up on this, but strong advance poll turnout usually means a change election. But who knows in this case? And usually Conservatives have strong support from retirees and the older population. But that's not what the polls are showing right now. The retiree boomer age category is supporting the Liberals and supporting Mark Carney, and those tend to be people that also go to advanced polls more often. So we were busy at a hockey tournament at a rink where there was an advanced polling station, and I failed to do any exit polls. But to me, the fact that Conservatives are also holding rallies in Saskatoon last night and Calgary tonight is also a very troubling sign if you're hoping the Conservatives form government after Monday.
Is it a troubling sign, or is it just anyway? We need to take a break and we'll talk about it more. But it's a bit of a head scratcher. So we'll pick up on that after a break. We're just going to go to a break, and then we'll be back with the Issues Panel right after this.
Right now, people in agriculture and food are facing challenges that can feel overwhelming. If you need to talk, access the National Farm Crisis Line at 1-866-FARMS-01. That's 1-866-327-6701. It's 24/7 confidential help when you need it. Farm Credit Canada also has tools to support your long-term mental health. Learn more and access the crisis line at fcc.ca/wellness.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. Understanding the challenges you face, Nutrient Ag Solutions works with you to find the right solution every time. Nutrient Ag Solutions is one partner, all in. Visit nutrientagsolutions.ca to learn how their offerings work together to support your operation. All right, I am Lyndsey Smith, your host for today, and I'm bringing in the Issues Panel for one more segment. I've got Shaun, Haney, Kelvin, Heppner, Tyler McCann. Okay, I want to talk, and it's maybe not popular, but I think it's a real interesting conversation that has come out of this entire election campaign, and really where we've been at since Trump's inauguration. This idea of national unity in Canada. We've got our elbows up. We have Mike Myers making appearances in campaigns. We've got the Bloc and Quebec being incredibly patriotic. It is a very strange time. Kelvin, help me make sense of it. If Mark Carney, wins a majority government, and I'm going to ask Shaun this too, but does that put into question whether or not Alberta, Saskatchewan, I don't know, none of it, decide that they want to join the U.S. and or just leave Canada?
I think we're a long way from that happening, but certainly people in the West would not feel heard, would feel even more frustrated with the country and with Ottawa. And I think if Carney wins the election, he will have to make some intentional massive signals to the West to try to quell some of that unrest. And whether that means building pipelines, which he sure seems reluctant to say that he would do that, or even is saying he wouldn't do that, it might require something like that to actually keep people happy in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And it's hard to believe after the last decade that this is potentially, and I think a lot of people in Western Canada, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, here in Manitoba as well, feel frustrated that this is a possible outcome after looking like we were going to have a conservative government that would have more roots in the West.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, what is it like to be in Alberta and mention that the Liberals may maintain being the government?
Well, I think Kelvin described it really well. I think it's going to be really up to, if that is the scenario that plays out, I think it's going to really be up to Mark Carney to lead that way. And like Kelvin alluded to, one of the questions I have is, he's in this position because of the NDP just cratering. And so what do you do with that flank of the Liberal Party that is now more a part of your base than it was previously? He's got a pretty wide swath here that he has cut. He has got the NDP left, plus he's taken more of the center. It's going to be a real challenge for him to navigate this. Now, he does have some roots in Alberta. We can battle over how deep those roots are. Is it a tap root or just something that's on the surface? But the reality is that I think he's got a lot of work to do to prove that. I feel bad because just like I had this dream the Leafs were going to win the Cup, and now everyone's blaming me for that. I was on the Vance Crowe podcast going back to last fall, and my Peter Thiel paradox that I mentioned was that Alberta would be the first province to leave the country. And your question about joining the U.S., I think that's not even I think that's that's not part of the question.
Two questions.
Polls are showing that Western separation is increasing in popularity, but it's still only about 35%. So that's, there's still 65% that say no to that. So is it going to be more of an issue? Yes. Is Alberta or Saskatchewan or whoever else wants to join in that fight going to just happen? I don't think so. Not in the short term anyway.
BC may not have a choice because one more earthquake and it might just split off. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Tyler, we did, just before we went to the break, we did mention that Poilievre's campaign ending in the West this week. And really, from my perspective, Poilievre has not been in his own riding doing any other work. Is it a signal that Poilievre is out there, does that mean he feels that that's where he's going to make the biggest impact, or does he just love the crowds? Do you think it's a smart move that with, so much in the balance, he's spending his time there and not, say, in Southern Ontario or in Quebec?
So campaigns go where they're polling and their internal numbers tell them they need to go, and so I'm assuming it's a smart move because they're doing that. They are a smart campaign team in theory. So if he's spending time in Calgary, it's probably because there is some truth to the kind of the stories that some of those Calgary seats are in play. Again, there are 2 Liberal seats there already. Maybe there's going to be 3 or 4 on Monday. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting dynamics around Western separation. The Western separation movement may be increasing at a time that the Liberal seat count in Western Canada is increasing too. So I don't know how they're going to square that circle. But yeah, I mean, you absolutely can read a lot into where parties go in the final days of a campaign, and it is quite something that Poilievre is in Calgary and Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm. I find it quite interesting. All right, we've got a couple minutes left here on the show. Did any of you don't have to tell me who you voted for, but did any of you vote in the advance polls? I know Kelvin was stalking them, but did anyone actually vote in them? No. Okay, good.
No.
That's
No.
excellent.
And I'd like to be part of the crowd. I like to be part of the action.
Me too. Okay, so this is where I want to put this. Is that okay? So first of all, it is a Monday. Everyone, make sure you've got your voter card and your ID and all those things ready, because everyone should go vote. I really love to vote on election day. I don't think I've ever done advance polls as of yet. I see why we have them. I'm glad that we do, but I like going on election day. I also literally vote like 2 minutes from my house, so I have no reason not to. But Kelvin, that's my question. You're obviously going to vote on election day. How are you going to be watching the coverage? Do you have a watch party planned? What are you going to be doing on election day?
Maybe we should organize a RealAg watch party. I know I'm busy. Shaun, was it the last election that we hung out for
4 hours? 4 hours? We did a live stream for like 4 hours. We could do that again. I'd be up for that.
All right. Okay. Well, okay. So you guys can start on the agronomists at 8 p.m. and then we'll just hang around.
Yeah.
We'll stay. We'll talk about PGRs and then we'll talk about elections and we'll just
roll into election.
Just keep rolling. Okay.
And then I think Lyndsey will be able to tell whether or not Kelvin's face is getting smilier or sadder, depending on how the results come in and who's winning or losing on.
Well, you're the one wearing red, so there you go. All right, Tyler. So you're a voter on voting day. Are you going to have a watch party? How do you spend election day?
So again, so in the past, I think I'm probably the one person on the panel that's spent time working on election day, volunteering on campaigns, because again, I used to wear those blue shirts all of the time. So even that, I was a bad campaign volunteer because I always wanted to vote on election day, and you're supposed to do that, get that out of the way so you can be focused on other priorities. No, I mean, I expect I will be at home. I will be tuning in to the live stream, I guess, of Shaun and Kelvin after the agronomist. I'm not so much into the agronomist, Lyndsey, but I could be into the RealAg election watch party if that's
doesn't like sports, doesn't like agronomy. I don't know who is this guy.
Yeah.
Policy
wonk. That's it. I'll tell you, Tyler, you're missing out. The Agronomist is a great show.
I have
entertaining around a fire.
Okay, see, there you go. Yeah, Tyler's a lot of fun at parties, everybody. Okay, Shaun, so we are, you're going to join us for our watch party. No. Do you have any special traditions for the election beyond bugging Kelvin continually?
Oh, not really. I'll be tuned in, like watching TV, and I love watching the analysis and the panels and breaking it all down and see what do we expect to happen versus what did happen and all those kind of things. I love election night. I could tune into a UK election and be entertained and enjoy it. So
see, you and Tyler do have some things in common.
Yeah. Big shout out to the Lethbridge Hurricanes this weekend as they take on the Medicine Tigers in Western Hockey League semifinal action. Okay. So go Hurricanes! I want to get that out there.
So here I was not going to talk sports, and way to go, Shaun. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I was going to say, here's my fun election day story. So we bought a cow on a sale one weekend, and I didn't plan things right. And I had to go pick the cow up on the Monday on election night, and didn't have time to take the cow home first. So I took a cow to a polling station with me once to vote. So
and did she vote correctly is really the question.
She stayed in the trailer. She stayed in the trailer, didn't come into to the polling station. But we do it as a family thing. I think it's important to take the kids involved, remind them how important it is for them to get out and vote and be engaged. So it's a big family affair for us.
Here too, Tyler, and actually, so we just had a provincial election here in Ontario, and my my daughter, my oldest, came with me. My youngest has come with me as well. And actually yesterday we had a really cool conversation. My daughter just turned 17, so she doesn't get to vote in this election. A bit of a bummer, but she went through the vote compass question, and we went through that together. And it was really fascinating to see and hear a 17-year-old be like, well, why is that an issue? She had some really great sort of reactions to some of the questions that are part of the vote compass. So it was super cool. It was a great exercise, and I'm really excited. It is a family thing here too, Tyler. Kelvin, do you bring all the kids and chickens, or do you leave the livestock at home?
Livestock stay at home. Kids come with if it's convenient, and just check the schedule. Looks like no softball or hockey practice on Monday nights, so
perfect.
Should be.
They can hold all your ID and everything for you before you go in. Okay, we've got to wrap it up. We're not going to ask about the playoff results. We'll talk about that next week, Kelvin. I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. Shaun, what's that? What's that, Kelvin?
One of the blue teams is going to win here in the next couple of days. That's
one of them. Okay, I hope it's the Winnipeg one. Okay, all right. Tyler, have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Lyndsey.
All right, we'll see you, Shaun. And all right. And Kelvin, have a great weekend. Get some seed in the ground, maybe.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
All right. If you've got feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or you can find us across social media. And yes, check us out Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, The Agronomist, followed by the Election Watch Party. All right. Cheers, everybody. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio episode brought to you by Coragen Max Insecticide from FMC. When you need to protect your crops from damaging insects, Coragen Max Insecticide delivers fast, selective, extended control of grasshoppers, Bertha armyworms, diamondback moth, cutworms, and more. Ask your retailer or visit ag.fmc.com/CA today.